And now I want to hand things over to Tiana. I'm extra happy to have Tiana here. She's one of my classmates. I am really excited. She shared both an essay by James Baldwin and a documentary about him that really impacted her. So can you just tell us a little bit about these resources and how they were impactful for you?
Yeah, of course, I would love to. So first, thank you, Angelique, for introducing me. I was very, very impacted by both reading The White Man's Guilt essay, which was published on Ebony by James Baldwin, and the I Am Not Your Negro documentary, which was an unfinished manuscript of his upcoming book, Remember This House, that he never got to publish. And so in the documentary, he personally reflects on the accounts and lives of his three murdered friends, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr., who were all young men who were assassinated. And so the film experience for me, as well as the essay, was very raw. It was real, and it was a reflection of lived experience as a Black person that um, I could connect to. As hard as it was a connection. Looking at people being assassinated, we're seeing that today on social media. It was real for me. And so even watching the film, I tend to work up a lot of emotions. And I think Baldwin's means of storytelling and the way in which he articulates the experience and the relationship between Black people and white people in America is really a form of art. I think he strings together words that paint a picture that we can visualize. And so, one quote from the White Man's Guilt essay that I'd love to read is: "The great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us and unconsciously controlled by it in many ways, and the history is literally present in all that we do." And so people who imagine that history flatters them, as it does indeed since they wrote it, are impaled on their history like a butterfly on a pin and become incapable of seeing or changing themselves or the world. And so when I think about Kendi and thinking about anti-racism, the fact that we must acknowledge and no longer deny, and really see that. And I think it's a painful reality that we all must come to terms to. Um, that we all have participated in this. We all have a place in recognizing our positionality, and how we either perpetuate or work against racism, because it's written in everything we do. It's not just overt, but it's really almost invisible at this point. I think it's important to call that out, that the history is now, and we have to acknowledge that. Um, and so there's another quote that I'd like to read that came from the film. So I have always been struck in America by an emotionless poverty so bottomless and a terror of human life, of human touch so deep that virtually no any viable organic connection between his public stance and his private life has always had the most devastating effect on American public conduct and on Black-white relations. If Americans were not so terrified of their private selves, they would have never become so dependent on what they call the Negro problem. This problem, which they invented in order to safeguard their purity, has made them criminals and monsters, and it is destroying them. And this, not from anything Blacks may or may not be doing, but because the role of a guilty and constricted white imagination has assigned to the Blacks. And so I think it's really this was something that struck me the most, and I think it's really because we have come to a point of such denial, and you see that today, even Kendi expressing the not I'm not racist, and that's really just a mask for racism itself. And so coming to terms with how you carry yourself in your public life, how you live daily matters. And I think that's when we think about what it means to be anti-racist, that it's a daily lived experience. You're constantly and actively working towards this. You're recognizing it as it comes. You're unafraid to have the challenging conversations. You're unafraid to self reflect. You're unafraid to see how you have positioned yourself in regard to racism or anti-racism? What is it that you're supporting? What is it that you believe? What is it that you benefit from, or what is oppressing you? And how do you fight that? And so again, Baldwin says in the film, the Negro has never been as docile as white Americans wanted to believe. That was a myth. We were not singing and dancing down the levee. We were trying to keep alive. We were trying to survive a very brutal system. The nigger has never been happy in his place. And so when I think about what it means to be a Black woman and not being happy and wanting to live, and not just wanting to survive, but to really live and be comforted and to be successful, I think that's something that we often don't think about. And when we think about like the protests that are happening, people were never happy. People were never totally comfortable with the way their lives have been, because it is systemic, and it is written into everything, and our access to things are very skewed. And so when you think about people's positionality as a Black person in a Black body with Black skin, I'm sure no one's happy in the position that they have been. And really because it's a system set up against them. And so one last quote that Baldwin has said in the film is, "You cannot lynch me and keep me in ghettos without becoming something monstrous yourselves. And furthermore, you give me a terrifying advantage. You never had to look at me. I had to look at you. I know more about you than you know about me. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." And so I think it's very important that we as people are willing to acknowledge each other, to see each other, and really, again, reflect on what we're doing in our daily lives. I think that it comes down to every choice you make, what conversations you're willing to have, who you engage with, and what systems you uphold on a daily basis. And so looking at each other, recognizing that we're all humans, we all live, we all usually laugh and cry. And so I think that's important to see the humanity in everybody, and working towards being anti-racist means that, recognizing humanity in everybody. And so I don't think there's anything missing in the film or essay for me. I think what Baldwin has created was art that stands on its own. I think he does a beautiful job of illustrating visually, and the film is more riveting to me because you see the lives of Malcolm X, Martin, you see James Baldwin, you see Medgar Evans, and there were, no older than 28 years old, all of them assassinated. So that's some of us going to college. So when you think about how it could be you fighting this fight, and that's a real reality, I think it shakes you to your core to recognize that. And so I think the documentary is great. I think it stands on its own. I think the essay speaks for itself as well.